Did you know that there's a historic reason why sweet pies became preferred in America over meat pies? Or the one difference between an American apple pie and a British apple pie? Have you heard of some of the more unique pie combinations that exist around the UK? Maybe you have, but you won't know for sure unless you watch this video, so here we go. Doing a pie video has always been on my list because British people love pie and American people love pie, but I'm not sure that either country realizes that the other country loves pie in a completely different way to them. As a magic trick, I want you to listen to the word pie and picture it in your head. Okay, got it? If you're British, I'm guessing that you pictured some sort of meat pie or savory pie. Maybe you got thrown off because I just mentioned apple pies, but your default pie category that comes up in your head is probably savory. If you're American, I bet you pictured a sweet pie. Maybe pumpkin, apple, pecan, pecan, whatever. But the chances that it's a sweet pie are pretty high. This is because Brits love meat pie and Americans love sweet pies, and both types exist in both countries, but they really went different ways over the years with their appreciation of pie culture. If you look up the top 10 British pies, it goes something like this: steak pie, shepherd's pie, steak and ale pie, cheese and onion pie, pie and mash, pasty, does that count? Not for this video, pot pie, meat and potato pie, and I would also include things like a leek pie or a cottage pie. But if you look up the most popular pies in the US, they're like, meat pies? What? No thank you. This list is all sweet pies. There is no meat in sight. Now the US does have some savory pies. The two main types are shepherd's pie and a pot pie. If you're in the UK, a shepherd's pie in the US is a cottage pie in the UK, usually a savory pie made with beef. In the UK, shepherd's pie is made with lamb, hence the shepherd's name, and cottage pie is made with beef, but Americans don't differentiate because lamb is relatively uncommon in American cuisine. Also, Americans put corn in their shepherd pie. Don't shoot the messenger. America does also have what's called a pot pie. The most popular is a chicken pot pie. It typically has a flaky pastry and a combination of chicken and vegetables inside. But these are the two main savory pies in America. Compare this to the UK, where the list of savory pies goes on and on and on, and you'll see the difference in what each culture thinks about pie. However, meat pies weren't always out of fashion in the US. In fact, they used to be extremely popular. But to figure out what happened to meat pies in America, first we have to find out how they started at all. Let's talk about the history of pie in the UK. Also, for the record, I'm so glad I went to university so that I could use all these essential skills spending my life researching pies. Someone's got to do it, I guess. So everyone say, thank you Romans for the pies. They introduced them, essentially as a way to preserve meat within a crust to make sure that the pastry kept the air out. They wouldn't eat the crust usually, they'd get rid of it, which is a shame because it's my most favorite part of a pie, and this continued on into medieval times. Also, this is a huge side note, but as I'm reading through this 4-page document on the history of pies for you all, I can't help but notice that the man who wrote it is a member of the Pork Pie Association and the British Pie Awards, which are given out during British Pie Week, and I couldn't think of any witty comments to say here. I just am really impressed at the UK's dedication to pie. Moving along, the first cookbook in the English language dates back to the 1390s, and it has recipes for pie. But the pastry begins to be kept and eaten during medieval banquets, as the pie now becomes a centerpiece and you can make beautiful looking like pastry tops and elaborate pies. Allegedly, it was a big deal, and sometimes medieval chefs would have birds fly out of the pies, and British people think Americans are over the top. Some of the pie served in medieval times included humble pie, which was essentially pie made from the edible organs of a deer. This was mistaken for the word humble, and why the phrase is now eating humble pie if you're being humiliated or having to eat your words, because this sort of pie was usually served to the servants. Anyways, pie evolves and changes within the UK over the years, but the focus on meat pies remained constant. The first fruit pie doesn't even come around until the late 16th century, when Queen Elizabeth I was served the first cherry pie. Now let's fast forward a bit to the founding of the American colonies. As we know, they were founded by Europeans, and they weren't going to go across the entire ocean and forget to bring their pie recipes. That would be crazy. So in the beginnings of America, meat pies were regularly mentioned in cookbooks and were popular. You might be having lamb pie, beef pie, chicken pie, whatever. And this continues on through the mid-19th century. People were eating mincemeat pies, oyster pies, rump steak and kidney pies, chicken and ham pies, etc. So what happened? Did America turn against meat pies on purpose? There are a few reasons I found that are interesting. One being that by the late 1800s, there were multiple types of cuisines competing for attention in America. It wasn't just the British pies, but German food like German and Polish sausages, as well as Italian food, and more importantly, French food, including the casserole, which meant that you could just throw all of your meat and ingredients in a dish without a crust, which was easier than making a pie. And if there's one thing you should have learned by now from my videos, it's that Americans always take the more convenient way out and we don't feel that sorry about it. Another reason, similar to the cuisines, had to do with immigration. America was a nation of immigrants throughout the 1800s, and many of these people had foreign-born family members who came from places like Poland or Germany or Italy, and of course they passed down their own recipes, so it wasn't just a nation with British descent. But what about the rise of the sweet pie in the US over meat pies? Those take some work to make as well. There's a historic reason for this. During the early to mid-19th century, the US established a sugar refining industry on the mainland. This meant that Americans could get their hands on sugar so much more easily and cheaply than those in Europe who had to pay to import it. And suddenly, the obsession with sweet pies is born, as well as probably a future diabetes problem, but that's for another video. Now that we know where the pies have come from, and we've done a brief rundown of the types of pies in each place, let's talk about some of the more unique pies in the UK. Firstly, you've got Stargazy pie, a Cornish delicacy that features 7 types of fish, with their heads emerging from the short crust topping. This is traditionally cooked in a village in Cornwall on the 23rd of December to commemorate a 16th century fisherman who ensured the locals didn't go hungry through some pretty intense Christmas-winter storms. It's called a Stargazy pie because the fish are arranged to look towards the stars. Now, I'm not trying to judge British culture here, so I am sorry in advance, but I took one look at this dish and I am horrified and will have nightmares tonight. Then you have the Denby Dale pies from Yorkshire, which are giant pies typically made for special occasions. They really like to take it to the next level. The pie made in 2000 for the millennium weighed 12 tons and was 40 feet long. It was then blessed by a bishop, as you do. And they have a poem about Denby Dale pies as well, because why not? Then you've got an actual pie flavor combination that doesn't involve stargazing fish or a pie so large that it can't be served on a table, which is the Gala pie. This takes your classic pork pie, but instead of just being a pork pie filling, the filling includes a bit of chicken and hard-boiled egg, so it's like a combination of a pork pie and a Scotch egg into one. Here's a picture of that to get the image of fish heads out of your brain. And of course, there are multiple things you can eat with pie in the UK, including chips, which are thick cut fries for my American friends, mashed potato, just called mash usually, or if you're in East London, jellied eels, a classic Cockney dish of native British eels, boiled and then cooled. So that covers our savory pie. At this point in the video, if you're still with me and if you haven't already, give yourself a second to comment below and let me know your favorite type of pie before we move on to the differences in sweet pies between the UK and the US. I also found some pie jokes for this brief intermission. If only my professors could see me now. Okay, where do pies learn to read? At primary school. Should I insert a laugh track here? Probably. What do you get if you cross a snake with a pie? A python. Why did the pie go to the dentist? Because it needed a filling. Okay, I'm done now. Let's do a quick run through of sweet pies because I do want to mention how British apple pie and American apple pie differ, as well as talk about the different favorite types of sweet pies in each country. So the answer to the difference in apple pies is that American apple pies always have cinnamon as an ingredient. Pretty much a non-negotiable. In the UK, apple pies don't always have cinnamon. Most don't. Many recipes don't. It's sort of an optional thing. This does make a huge difference in the taste, and I have to say that I much prefer American apple pie for that reason. Apple pie, in fact, is synonymous with American culture. Apples grew well in the American colonies and could be stored through winter, meaning they made for great pies. It wasn't until 1924 that the first use of the phrase "as American as apple pie" came about, but from there it really boomed. Interestingly enough, World War I boosted the appeal of apple pie in the US because eating it now became patriotic. You're doing your part as an American by eating apple pie, and this continued on through World War II and the Cold Wars. While the Brits were turning things like Cadbury's and fish and chips into their patriotic war foods, Americans were turning all of their attention to their favorite apple pie. In the UK, there are sweet pies, as I've mentioned. There are some popular sweet pies like banoffee pie and lemon meringue pie. I can't really think of any other really iconic ones. There's nothing like the equivalent of the apple pie to American culture, but comment below if you can think of any iconic UK sweet pies. In the US, we definitely have more well-known sweet pies, including key lime pie made of key lime juice, condensed milk, and eggs with a buttery crust. We have lemon meringue pie as well. We have a peanut butter pie, which comes from Georgia and is filled with gooey peanut butter and brown sugar. Then there's something like maple cream pie in Vermont, made from maple syrup and brown sugar, as well as pecan pie or pecan pie, which comes from Georgia. Blueberry pie is popular in the New England states. Cherry pie, Georgia peach pie, a sweet potato pie, a pumpkin pie, fudge pies, Mississippi mud pies. This only touches the tip of the American pie iceberg, but if you can't tell, we really love sweet pie. It's always eaten at Thanksgiving, a staple dessert, and it's often served in restaurants as an option for dessert and used for other social gatherings or potlucks, or just to have in your house for when you want a slice. Okay, I think you've done it. If you're still watching this video, I need to say thank you, and also need you to reevaluate your life choices that you've made it this far in a video about UK versus US pie. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Share all of your favorite pie anecdotes with us in the comments, and I'll see you next time.